Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Praise Yahuwah, praise Yahuwah. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Praise Yahuwah, praise Yahuwah. For Yahuwah is great, greatly to be praised. He is to be feared above Almighty One. Hallelujah. Some trust in chariots and some in horses, but we will remember the name of Yahuwah Almighty One. Hallelujah. 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 Praise Yahuwah. I'd like to welcome everyone to Kodesh Nation and to our Shabbat class. Brothers and sisters, what I'm going to be bringing forth today is part 2 of the key to understanding the true Shabbat. Part 2 to the key to understanding the true Shabbat. Brothers and sisters, last Shabbat I brought forth, of course, part 1 to the key to understanding the true Shabbat. Hallelujah. And I give Yah praise that it's gotten good views. Praise Yah. People are hearing this truth. And what I want to do before I get into part 2 is I want to summarize what we did in part 1. Now, if you have not heard part 1, even though I am summarizing it, I urge you to go back and listen to part 1 in its entirety, even before you get to part 2, because part 2 will make more sense to you if you've gone through part 1, even though I am going to summarize it. Praise Yahuwah. But we're talking about the key to understanding the true Shabbat. What I brought out last Shabbat in part 1 was how the key to understanding the true Shabbat is understanding how that first fruits, the festival of first fruits, praise Yahuwah, it's listed right after Pesach, Passover, in Wa'ikra, Leviticus chapter 23, that first fruits is a typology of the resurrection of the Mashiach, which most Messianic Torah keepers understand that. I haven't run into one that disagree with that. That first fruits is a typology of the resurrection of the Mashiach. But not only is it a typology of the resurrection of the Mashiach, it is a typology of the third day resurrection of the Mashiach. Once you get that understanding, then you will understand that in Wa'ikra, Leviticus chapter 23, verse 11, when it says that the sheaf of the first fruits is to be waved on the morrow after the Shabbat. Praise Yahuwah. Then you'll understand that that Shabbat is a 7th-day Shabbat. Praise Yahuwah. And not only is it a 7th-day Shabbat and not some high Shabbat, because in part 1 we dispelled any notion of a high Shabbat connected to the Feast of Unleavened Bread. That's a denominational concept. That's what these Christian Sabbatarian denominations, they use terminology like that. High Sabbath, high Shabbat, that's where we get that from. Praise Yahuwah. But that's not talking about any high Shabbat or high Sabbath, because there is no high Sabbath connected to the Feast of Unleavened Bread, Festival of Unleavened Bread, Matzot. We proved that in part 1. Praise Yahuwah. The only festivals that are called Shabbathon or Sabbaths are the festivals of the 7th month. Everything else are set apart convocations. You don't see them called Sabbath. So when it says that the sheaf of the first fruits is waved on the morrow after the Shabbat, that is not only a 7th-day Shabbat, but that's Aviv 15, the Shabbat that immediately follows Pesach. Praise Yahuwah. And in order for first fruits to be a typology not only of the resurrection of the Mashiach, but of the third day resurrection of the Mashiach, when you count the third day from Pesach, you get the morrow after the Sabbath, praise Yahuwah, where the wave sheaf is to be waved, praise Yah, and that's Aviv 16. What that means is that 7th-day Sabbath is Aviv 15 every single year. If first fruits typifies the third day resurrection of the Mashiach every single year, then that Sabbath in Leviticus chapter 23 verse 11 has to be Aviv 15 every single year. We proved that in part 1 of this lesson last Shabbat. Praise Yahuwah. And so when you come to that understanding, that is the key. That is the key that you need in order to unlock your understanding of the Shabbat. Praise Yahuwah. And so what I'm going to do, and I'm going to show you how that's the key, but I'm going to summarize the points I made. But like I said, please stop this and go back and listen to part 1 first if you haven't listened to it already, because this will make more sense what I'm bringing out in part 2. But if we go to Luke chapter 24, Luke chapter 24. In Luke chapter 24, this is after Yahusha met with the Talmudim on the road to Emmaus. They didn't recognize him, and how he asked what was going on, and how Cleopas talked about how he was handed over to the elders, religious leaders, how his enemies, and then they put him to death. And then Cleopas said, now this is the first day of the week, Cleopas said that besides, today is the 3rd day since all these things took place. Praise Yah. Cleopas declared that was the 3rd day since these things took place. Yahusha later affirmed that. He didn't correct Cleopas. He affirmed that yes, that this was the 3rd day, because why did Cleopas say that this is the 3rd day since these things took place? Because many times over Yahusha said that he would be delivered into the hands of his enemies, and then he'd be killed, and then he would be raised the 3rd day. So they were looking for him to come forth the 3rd day.
That's right. Hallelujah.
Praise Yah. So, he met with them, and then he revealed himself to them, and later on he met with the other Talmudim. And so, but in the midst of this is what he said here. In verse 44, Luke 24, it said, and he said to them, these are the words which I spoke to you while I was still with you, that all have to be filled that were written in the Torah of Mashah and the Nebaim and the Tehillim concerning me. So once again, he said, these are the things I spoke to you before. Remember, I talked about Yahusha said how he'd be handed over, praise Yah, killed and raised the 3rd day. Now 45. Then he opened their minds to understand the Scriptures. Praise Yah. So what that tells us is they could not understand the Scriptures merely by reading them. Their understanding of what they were reading needed to be opened. Verse 46, and said to them, thus it has been written, and so it was necessary for Hamashiach to suffer and to rise again from the dead the 3rd day, and that repentance and forgiveness of sins should be proclaimed in his name to all nations, beginning at Yerushalayim. Praise Yahuwah. And so Yahusha said that these things were written. And so we must ask ourselves, where are these things written? You have, I saw a non-messianic that wrote this big paper, praise Yah, this big treatise against Yahusha being Mashiach, and he said, he couldn't be the Mashiach because he spoke falsely here when he said that it's written that the Mashiach would suffer and that he would rise again from the dead the 3rd day. So because it's not in the Scriptures verbatim in black and white, this man's saying, he's false because of that. Well, his understanding has not been opened to understand the Scriptures. Praise Yahuwah, because those of us that are Messianic Torah keepers, we understand that it could be written in precept, praise Yah, or prophecy, but it could also be written in symbolism as well. Praise Yahuwah. Because we know it's written that the Mashiach would suffer and that he would die between the evenings. And we know that that was written in the Pesach instructions, because we know that that points towards Yahusha. Praise Yah. If your understanding is not open, you will not understand that. But the same thing goes with first fruits. Praise Yah. Where is it written that the Mashiach would rise from the dead the 3rd day? In the instructions for first fruits. That's where it's written. Praise Yah. Now, like I said, most Messianic Torah keepers, they would agree with me that the resurrection of the Mashiach is typified in the instructions for first fruits. Praise Yahuwah. But where I want to build the bridge, brethren, praise Yah, to all of you who agree that first fruits points to the resurrection of the Mashiach, is that I want to emphasize how first fruits points to the third day resurrection of the Mashiach. Just like he said here, he said that he would rise again from the dead the third day. All of that. We got to include all of that. Praise Yah. And he said it's written. So it's written in the instructions for first fruits that he would suffer and he would rise from the dead. Pesach and first fruits. He would suffer and he would rise from the dead the third day. It's all in there, in those instructions. Praise Yahuwah. In typology. That's what it is pointing towards, brothers and sisters. Praise Yahuwah. So, if we turn to Matthew 16. So, when Yahushua said that these are the things that I spoke to you, we're going to look at one of the things that he spoke to them. In Matthew 16, this is after Kepha makes the great confession that Yahushua is the Mashiach, the Ben of the living Elohim, Son of the living Elohim. Praise Yah. But verse 21. It says, from that time, Yahushua began to show his Talmidim that it was necessary for him to go to Yerushalayim and to suffer much from the elders and Kohanim and scribes and be killed and be raised again the third day. Praise Yahuwah. And so one thing I pointed out in part 1 was how that whenever Yahushua makes reference to the third day, he always begins with him being handed over to the elders, to his enemies, and suffering of the elders. See, that's the first thing he mentions, and then he talks about how he's going to be killed and then raised the third day. Praise Yah. And so he said this on a number of occasions. This is why he said to them, this is what I said to you when I was with you. Praise Yah, because he said it multiple times. Now, when he spoke of his resurrection, he would speak of him being raised the third day. He used that terminology, the third day. That is a part of it. That's a part of the typology, brothers and sisters. Praise Yah. And so I brought that out and I showed what that third day is, Hebraically. It's with inclusive reckoning. And so the third day, according to Hebrew, Hebraic terminology, and I gave examples of this even in the Hebrew Scriptures, is to us it would be the day after tomorrow. That's the third day, because we include the day we're sitting in as day 1. Praise Yah. And so we worked our way backwards, and we saw how Yahushua rose the third day. Cleopas said this is the third day since these things took place. And so the second day had to have been Aviv 15, 7-day Shabbat, praise Yahuwah. And so day 1 is Aviv 14, Pesach, when he was slain. Praise Yah. We worked our way backwards. We didn't go to Matthew 12:40 with the 3 days and 3 nights and Jonah and then work our way forwards, conforming everything to our understanding of the sign of Jonah. That's how most do it, and that's how they end up in error. No, you work your way backwards. You see when he was really slain, the Shabbat that really came after his slaying, praise Yah, which was the 7th day Shabbat, and then how he rose the third day. Just like it says, you don't have to add anything to it. You don't have to put a little triangle before Shabbat and put high by it. So to say high Shabbat, whenever you're referencing the Shabbat that was immediately came after Yahushua's death, you don't have to change the scripture up to make it work. Just say what it says. And it'll take you there. It'll take you to the truth. Praise Yahuwah. And so, with the 3 days and 3 nights, we showed, because, see, a proper understanding of the sign of Yonah and the 3 days and 3 nights, that what that will do is that will remove the blinders that are keeping you from seeing this key. That's one of the main things that's keeping people from seeing the key, is this false understanding that Yahushua spent 72 hours in the grave. So we explained in detail in part 1 why that cannot be so. Praise Yahuwah. And the key to understanding that is understanding that the count does not begin with his death. And so we showed you where the count begins and how to do the count for the 3 days and the 3 nights. But once you remove that false understanding, then it's much easier to see the key, brothers and sisters. Praise Yahuwah. Now, we showed how that Miriam of Magdala, also known as Mary Magdalene, praise Yah, and how he appeared to her, and how he said, "Don't touch me, don't hold on to me. I have not yet ascended to my Father and your Father, my Elohim and your Elohim." Praise Yah. So he had to be presented before the Father first as that first fruits, wave sheep offering, before he could be touched and handled by others, which he was later that day. Mm-hmm. Praise Yah. So we see that he ascended to the Father the first time and presented himself before him. Praise Yah. And so that even strengthens just the truth about how the wave sheep offering points to Yahusha and his resurrection. Praise Yahuwah. And not just that, but his 3rd day resurrection. So if we go to Wa'ikra, Leviticus 23, I'm going to show you the significance of this. I'm going to show you the significance of the 3rd day resurrection. Not just the resurrection, the 3rd day resurrection. Wa'ikra 23 in verse 9. Now we're still in the summary. Verse 9 says, "And Yahuwah spoke to Mashah, saying, Speak to the children of Yashraal, and you shall say to them, When you come into the land which I give you, and shall reap its harvest, then you shall bring a sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest to the Kohen. And he shall wave the sheaf before Yahuwah for your acceptance. On the morrow after the Shabbat, the Kohen waves it. And on that day when you wave the sheaf, you shall prepare a male lamb, a year old, a perfect one, as a burnt offering to Yahuwah, and its grain offering 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil, an offering made by fire to Yahuwah, a sweet fragrance, and its drink offering 1/4 of a hin of wine. And you do not eat bread or roasted grain or fresh grain until the same day that you have brought an offering to your Elohim, Allah forever, throughout your generations and all your dwellings." So they were not to partake of the new grain until it was presented before Yah. Interesting, it said, "It shall be presented before Yahuwah for your acceptance." Wasn't Yahusha presented before Yahuwah for our acceptance? Yes. Once he rose from the dead. So look at how accurately it foreshadows and points to the resurrection of the Mashiach. But like I said, Yahusha said it's written that he will rise from the dead the 3rd day. Praise Yah. So where's the 3rd day resurrection in this? Praise Yah. We see the instructions for Pesach right before. Praise Yah. And then when it goes into this, it said, "And he shall wave the sheaf before Yahuwah," verse 11, once again, "for your acceptance on the morrow after the Shabbat." On the morrow after the 7th day Shabbat. It's Shabbat, not Shabbathon, not feast Sabbath, but Shabbat, 7th day Shabbat. On the morrow after the Shabbat, it is to be waved. Praise Yahuwah. The only way that first fruits can typify a 3rd day resurrection of the Mashiach is if the sheaf is waved the 3rd day from Pesach. Praise Yah. Pesach day 1, 7th day Shabbat day 2, and then wave sheaf day 3. 3rd day resurrection of the Mashiach. Praise Yah. But if you don't do it that way, if you keep a perpetual Shabbat, then you'll be all over the map. And it will not fulfill prophecy. That your first fruits will typify a 2nd day resurrection, a 5th day resurrection, a 6th day resurrection, a 4th day resurrection, every now and then a 3rd day resurrection, and it'll bounce all over the place. See, that's the true floating Sabbath. That's right. People say lunar Sabbath is the floating Sabbath. No, that's the floating Sabbath. Yep. Praise Yah. When you're supposed to keep the Sabbath in such a way that first fruits will typify the 3rd day resurrection, but you got this 2nd day, 5th day, 6th day, 4th day, 3rd day sometimes. Praise Yah. It floats. It floats on Yah's calendar. It floats on Yah's system. Praise Yahuwah. And so that Shabbat is Aviv 15 every year, in order for first fruits to typify the 3rd day resurrection of the Mashiach. Praise Yahuwah. And so, brothers and sisters, that's the key. And once you have the key, now I'm going to show you how to use the key. Now turn to Shemoth, Exodus 12. Exodus 12. Now one thing I want to say about this is that when we talk about Yah's calendar, and we see it introduced to us in Creation Week, praise Yah, but I believe too much emphasis is put on Creation Week, praise Yahuwah, and not enough emphasis is put on what I call the restored calendar. The restored calendar. Praise Yah. Now, in Shemoth 12, Exodus 12, we're going to start reading about this restored calendar. Verses 1 and 2, it says, And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe and to Aharon in the land of Mitzrayim, saying, This month is the beginning of months for you. It is the first month of the year for you. Praise Yah. And so what's taking place here is Yah is restoring his calendar to his people. Because they've been in bondage. Our forefathers were in bondage in Egypt. Praise Yahuwah, for many years. And they are under a completely different calendar system. They say that Egypt had a solar calendar. Praise Yahuwah. Whereas the ancient Israelites had a lunisolar calendar. And so this is why Yah had to set them straight as far as their times. Praise Yah. Because Yah wouldn't, if they were on the same calendar system as Egypt. Remember now, Moshe was learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians. Moshe would have already known that. He wouldn't need to be told about any calendar. Praise Yah. But Yah told him, now, this month is the beginning of months. It is the first month of the year for you. And the Egyptians, they do their own thing, but this is the first month of the year for you. This is the restored calendar, brothers and sisters. Praise Yahuwah. The reason why I believe that this is where we need to put our attention and not Creation Week is this. That a lot of the focus on Creation Week, I really do believe it comes from Sabbath denominations, particularly the Seventh-day Adventists, because they boast of keeping the creation Sabbath. They say that everything began on day one. Yah said to let there be light, and then there are 7 days, and that 7-day cycle has perfectly perpetuated itself all the way to today. Praise Yah. Where the Roman seventh day, that's the exact seventh day that Yah set apart at creation without interruption. That's what they teach. Praise Yahuwah. And if we will admit it, those of us Messianic Torah keepers, whether we're Hebrew Israelites, Hebrew roots, whatever persuasion you come under, praise Yah, if we will admit it, a lot of what we've learned, a lot of our concept of the Shabbat has come from Seventh-day Adventists and the Jews. That's where a lot of it has come from, if we will be dead honest with ourselves. Praise Yah. When we started keeping Shabbat, what did we do? We started keeping it like everybody around us was doing. That's true. And so we got our concepts. A lot of people got their concepts from Seventh-day Adventists and the Jews. And when I hear people make arguments, they make some of the same arguments you see the Adventists making. Praise Yah, because that's who a lot of us learned it from. Praise Yah, maybe not directly, but indirectly. Learning it from someone who learned from someone who learned from them. Mm-hmm. Praise Yah. But that is one of their concepts. They really zero in on Creation Week. And here's the deal. This is the weakness of trying to use Creation Week alone to establish or prove the way you keep Shabbat. Praise Yah. Is that we see 7 days of creation. We see the seventh day that Yah has Baruch, He's set apart, praise Yah, but it's not crystal clear, praise Yah, when the new moon hits. It's not crystal clear, praise Yah. You have some that would say, well, the new moon was before day one of creation. You have some that say, no, the new moon was day one of creation, because if that was the first day of the week, it had to be the first day of the month. You have some that say, no, the moon wasn't created until the fourth day, so that was the new moon. There's no hard evidence of when the new moon hit. Praise Yah. And we're only shown 1 week. Now, there's a brother that showed me that, I think it's in Jubilees, they talk about the second week. But even if we are shown 2 weeks, that's not enough. Praise Yah. And so what we're shown in creation, even though that is important information, that alone is not going to prove or disprove anything.
Right.
Praise Yah. What we need to look to is the restored calendar that's being revealed to Mashah, that was revealed to Mashah here in Shemoth chapter 12. And the reason why we need to put our attention there is because, number one, we have a clear new moon. And then, number two, we have 2 months in a row, which you're going to see. And then, number three, we have actual numbered dates for the Shabbat. You don't have that for creation week. Praise Yah. That's why that we don't need to just spend all our time in creation week. You don't have these 3 things like you have on the restored calendar of Shemoth chapter 12 through chapter 16. Praise Yah. Once again, you have a clear new moon day. You have 2 months in a row where you can see, praise Yah, where the Shabbat hit. And then you have, number 3, you have actual numbered dates that the Shabbat fell on. Now, the question is this. Do you believe that it was the same calendar system in creation week as it was for Shemoth 12 through 16? See, if your answer is yes, then you would have to agree that we need to be spending some time here then. Because it's the same calendar. Praise Yah. Well, how did the new moon work out in creation, in the first 2 months of creation? Praise Yah. We're just not shown that information. So you know what we need to do? We need to go to where we are shown that information.
Right.
That's why we need to give our attention to the restored calendar. Praise Yahuwah. That was given to Mashah. Praise Yah. Now, like I said, I'm summarizing the points that I made in part 1, and I'm going to start introducing, some new things here. Praise Yah. Because what I want to do in part 2 here, I want to drive home the significance of the third day. Praise Yah. So if I had a subtitle for this lesson, I would call it The Scriptural Significance of the Third Day. The Scriptural Significance of the Third Day. Praise Yah. Now, what I want to do here, because I told you in the restored calendar that we're showing what's going on 2 months in a row. Praise Yah. So just to show you as far as what's going on in month 1, if we go to Wa'ikra, Leviticus 23 again, you keep your place in Exodus 12 because we're going to go back there. But I want to show you something real quick. Leviticus 23, I'm going to show you what's going on in month 1. Now we already proved in part 1, and I summarized how that first fruits typifies the third day resurrection of the Mashiach. Praise Yah. And in order for that to be so every year, the Shabbat, 7th day Shabbat, praise Yah, that the wave sheaf is waved after, the morrow after the Shabbat. That Shabbat has to be Aviv 15 every single year. I'm going to bring some things out that are going to confirm that. Now, Leviticus 23, just one verse, verse 6. It says, and on the 15th day of this month is the festival of Matzah to Yahuwah. 7 days you eat unleavened bread. That word festival is Chag. Chag in the Hebrew. Chag. Now, that, you'll see in the King James it'll say feast. It'll use feast for Chag, and then it'll use feast also for Moed or Moedim, which are appointed times. What you will find is that all of the annual appointed times come under the category of Moedim. All of them are appointed times, but not all of them are called Chag, or festival. Praise Yahuwah. It's the 3 principal ones that are called the Chag, the festival. It's Matzot, which is unleavened bread, Shavuot, which is a festival of weeks, and Sukkot, which is a festival of tabernacles. Praise Yahuwah. It's those three that are called the Chag, the festival. That differentiates them from just regular Moedim or regular appointed times. You know, it's like Yom Teruah. Praise Yah. It's just called a Moad. It's not called a Chag. It's a Moad. It's an appointed time. Praise Yah. Now, the reason why I'm telling you this is this. When you read the instructions for Sukkot, it talks about how the whole 7 days is called the Chag. It's a 7-day Chag. Praise Yah. But Festival of Matzot is different. Unleavened bread is different, and I'm going to show you why. Praise Yahuwah. Because the festival of unleavened bread, Pesach and the festival of unleavened bread, the focal point of it is one day. One specific day. One particular day. Praise Yah. You know how in the United States we have the 4th of Pagan July. And they call that Independence Day. We celebrate it every year. Not we, they. Praise Yah. But they celebrate it every year, pop their fireworks and play their trumpets and all that. Praise Yah. And brothers and sisters, there's one day that was our Independence Day as Israelites. One day. The day that Yah delivered us out of Mitzrayim with a mighty hand, with a strong arm. Praise Yahuwah. A mighty hand. The day He delivered us. Praise Yah. That was Abib 15. And so I'm going to show you the significance of that. Praise Yahuwah. Back to Shemoth 12, Exodus 12. Verse 14. I'm going to show you how important this day is supposed to be to us. Verse 14 says, "In this day shall become to you a remembrance, and you shall observe it as a Chag, a festival to Yahuwah throughout your generations. Observe it as a Chag, observe it as a festival in everlasting law. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread. Indeed, on the first day you cause leaven to cease from your houses. For whoever eats leavened bread from the first day until the 7th day, that being shall be cut off from Yashraal. And on the first day is a Kodesh gathering, and on the 7th day you have a Kodesh gathering. No work at all is done on them, only that which is eaten by every being, that alone is prepared by you. And ye shall guard the matzah, for on this same day." So you guard unleavened bread, but it's one day that's emphasized. On this same day I brought your divisions out of the land of Mitzrayim, and ye shall guard this day throughout your generations in everlasting law. This day. So one day, the focus is on one day. The focus is not on any of the other days. Even though we eat the unleavened bread 7 days, even though we have a set-apart gathering on the 1st and 7th day, it's one day that's emphasized. Praise Yahuwah. And so, brothers and sisters, it's that one day that is the quote-unquote high Sabbath of John chapter 19. Remember, they didn't want to leave the bodies on the stake, praise Yah, because of the Shabbat. And it said, for that Shabbat was, in King James it says a high day. And this is where Christian Sabbatarian denominations get the idea of a high Sabbath. Praise Yah. But that's not what was meant. That Shabbat was a high day. In other words, that was a feast Sabbath. No, that's not what was meant. That Greek word just means great. For that 7th day Shabbat was a great day. Well, what was so great about that day? It was Abib 15. It was Independence Day.
Right.
It wasn't just any 7th day Shabbat. Praise Yahuwah. It was the one day that we're to commemorate forever to memorialize our deliverance out of Mitzrayim.
That's right.
And so I wanted to show you the importance of this one day before I show you this. All right, chapter 13. Chapter 13. Remember now, we're on the restored calendar now. We're given more information on this one than we're given on the creation calendar. We're on the restored calendar now. Now, Shemoth 13, listen closely. Listen closely to what I'm saying here. Praise Yah. Verse 3, and it said, and Mashah said to the people, remember this day, which you went out of Mitzrayim, out of the house of slavery. For by strength of hand Yahuwah brought you out of this place, and whatever is leavened shall not be eaten. Okay, remember this day. Now check this out. Verse 4. Today you are going out in the month of Abib. And it shall be when Yahuwah brings you into the land of the Canaanites and the Hittites and the Amorites and the Hivites and the Jebusites, which he swore to your fathers to give you, a land flowing with milk and honey, that you shall keep this service in this month. Now listen very closely. Remember everything I just said in the past few minutes. Listen very closely. 7 days you eat unleavened bread, and on the seventh day is a festival, a chag to Yahuwah. On the seventh day, the seventh day, is a chag, a festival to Yahuwah. Praise Yahuwah. Now, at first glance, one may say, well, the seventh day is just the seventh day of the feast. Like that. But nowhere else in all of the Scriptures is the seventh day of the festival of Matzot, Feast of Unleavened Bread, referred to as the Chag, referred to as the festival. Praise Yahuwah. And it's not referred to as a 7-day festival like Sukkot is specifically called a 7-day festival. The only day that is magnified and emphasized on Matzot is day 1, Abib 15. The 15th of the first month, our Independence Day. That day is the Chag. Praise Yahuwah. Not the 7th day of the festival. There's nothing significant about the 7th day of the festival. So what does it mean when it says 7 days you eat unleavened bread, and on the 7th day is a Chag, a festival to Yahuwah? 7th day Shabbat. That's what that's talking about, brothers and sisters. The 7th day Shabbat.
That's right.
Hallelujah. Because that's the Chag, that's the festival, is Abib 15. Praise Yahuwah, the 7th day Shabbat. So that confirms what we saw already in Yahushua in the 3rd day resurrection. This is just confirmation of that. Praise Yahuwah. So I'm not making that out to be Abib 15 just by itself. That's confirmation of what's already there, brothers and sisters, with Wa'ikra 23:11 showing us the Abib 15 7th day Shabbat. Praise Yahuwah. So this is confirmation of that. Now, praise Yah, if we turn to Exodus chapter 16, we're going to show you the 2nd month of, praise Yahuwah, the restored calendar. The 2nd month. We saw the 1st month. We see through first fruits, praise Yahuwah, and confirmed by Shemoth 13:6 that Abib 15 is the 7th day Shabbat every year. Praise Yahuwah. Now we're going to show you the 2nd month. In part 1 of this lesson, I read a lot of scripture out of Shemoth 16 because I didn't want you to miss anything. Praise Yah. But I'm just going to read the first 6 verses of it, and you can read the rest. But in Shemoth 16 it said, "And they departed from Elam, and all the congregation of the children of Yashraal came to the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elam and Sinai, on the 15th day of the 2nd month, after their going out of the land of Mitzrayim. And all the congregation of the children of Yashraal grumbled against Mashah and Aharon in the wilderness. And the children of Yashraal said to them, If only we had died by the hand of Yahuwah in the land of Mitzrayim, when we sat by the pots of meat, and when we ate bread to satisfaction. For you have brought us out into this wilderness to put all this assembly to death with hunger. And Yahuwah said to Mashah, See, I am raining bread from the Shamayim for you, and the people shall go out and gather a day's portion every day, in order to try them whether they walk in my Torah or not. And it shall be on the 6th day that they shall prepare what they bring in, and it shall be twice as much as they gather daily. And Mashah and Aharon said to all the children of Yashraal, At evening you shall know that Yahuwah has brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim. And in the morning you shall see the esteem of Yahuwah, for he hears your grumblings against Yahuwah, and what are we that you grumble against us? Now, if you read the rest of this chapter, you will see clearly, Yah already said, I'm going to rain down bread for them, and on the 6th day I'm going to rain down twice as much. what you're going to see in this chapter is that very evening he rained down quail. That next morning he started to rain down bread.
Yes.
And if you count the days, praise Yah, then the first day he rained down manna was the 16th, and the 7th day where he rained down none was the 22nd, because it was the Shabbat.
Right.
Praise Yahuwah. And so, seeing that the 22nd was the Shabbat, the correct dates for the Shabbat in the second month of this restored calendar is the 8th, 15th, 22nd, and 29th. Praise Yahuwah. And seeing that Aviv 15 is a seventh-day Shabbat every single year in fulfillment of the third-day resurrection of the Mashiach, we see also in the first month that the Shabbats hit on the 8th, 15th, 22nd, and 29th of every lunar month. Brothers and sisters, the only way you can do that is by resetting the Shabbat every new moon, resetting the count to Shabbat every new moon. That's the only way you can arrive at those dates. Praise Yahuwah. Hallelujah. But the key to seeing that is you got to understand first fruits. You got to understand what Torah is talking about when it said the sheaf is to be waved on the morrow after the Shabbat. Praise Yahuwah. You got to understand what Shemoth 13:6 is saying when it says the seventh day is the Chag. See, and when you have that key, it'll unlock your understanding. It'll remove these traditional teachings, praise Yah, out of the way, and it'll allow you to see this thing clearly. Now, what I want to bring it home with is this, brothers and sisters. Turn to Bereshith Genesis chapter 22. Genesis 22. Because the gap that needs to be bridged is this. Especially those of you that are perpetual Shabbat keepers, Roman seventh-day Shabbat keepers. You and I agree that first fruits typifies the resurrection of the Mashiach. We agree on that. Praise Yahuwah. But where I need to build the bridge between you and I and our understanding concerning first fruits in its fulfillment in Yahushua is the significance of the third day resurrection. Not only does it typify the resurrection of the Mashiach, but the third day resurrection of the Mashiach. I want to show now the scriptural significance of the third day. The scriptural significance. Praise Yahuwah. In Shemoth 22, talking about Abraham here. Praise Yah. When he was tried, told to offer up Yitzhak. Verse 1 of Bereshith 22, Genesis 22. It says, and it came to be after these events that Elohim tried Abraham and said to him, Abraham. And he said, here I am. And he said, take your son now, your only son, Yitzhak, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains which I command you. And Abraham rose early in the morning and saddled his donkey and took 2 of his young men with him and Yitzhak his son. And he split the wood for the burnt offering and arose and went to the place which Elohim had commanded him. And on the third day, Abraham lifted his eyes and saw the place at a distance. And Abraham said to his young men, stay here with the donkey while the boy and I go over there and worship and come back to you. And Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it on Yitzhak his son, and he took the fire in his hand and a knife, and the 2 of them went together. And Yitzhak spoke to Abraham his father and said, my father. And he said, here I am, my son. And he said, see the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering? And Abraham said, my son, Elohim provides for himself the lamb for a burnt offering. And the 2 of them went together. Now, you know the rest of this account. Praise Yahuwah. You know the rest of this account that Abraham was told what to do by Yah. Now, you and I could not imagine what was going through his mind at this time, and how much of a trial this was for him, and just the battle that was going on within his mind. Praise Yah, for 2 days now. For 2 days, this was going on, and on the third day, praise Yah, he took his son, he offered him up, he was ready to slay him, and Yah stopped him. Praise Yah. Yah stopped him, that he was proven, he had proven his emunah, his trust in Yah, and that right there confirmed his emunah, that he believed Yah. It was accounted to him for righteousness. Praise Yahuwah. And so we see brothers and sisters, praise Yahuwah, we see this deliverance that Yah grants on the third day. Praise Yahuwah, that it was the third day after 2 days. 2 days of just seeming hopelessness. Praise Yah. The third day, Yah brings deliverance. Now, next place I want to go is Judges 20. Judges chapter 20. And I ministered on this chapter one time. It was in that lesson I have entitled, Yahuwah will lead you into failure. Praise Yahuwah. But in Judges chapter 20, we're going to start in verse 20. It says, And the men of Yasharal went out to battle against Benjamin, and the men of Yasharal put themselves in battle array to fight against them at Geba. And the children of Benjamin came out to Geba, and on that day cut down to the ground 22,000 men of the Yasharalim, the Israelites. But the men of Yasharal strengthened themselves and again formed the battle line at the place where they had put themselves in array on the first day. And the children of Yasharal went up and wept before Yahuwah until evening, and asked of Yahuwah, saying, Should I again draw near for battle against the children of my brother Benjamin? And Yahuwah said, Go up against him. And the children of Yasharal drew near to the children of Benjamin on the second day. And Benjamin went out against them from Geba on the second day, and cut down to the ground 18,000 more of the children of Yasharal. And all these drew the sword. And the children of Yasharal, even all the people, went up and came to Beethal, and wept, and sat there before Yahuwah, and fasted that day until evening. And they offered burnt offerings and peace offerings before Yahuwah. And the children of Yasharal asked of Yahuwah, the ark of the covenant of Elohim was there in those days. And Pinchas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aharon, stood before it in those days, saying, Should I yet again go out to battle against the children of my brother Benjamin, or should I cease? And Yahuwah said, Go up, for tomorrow I give them into your hand. And Yasharal put ambushers around Geba, and the children of Yasharal went up against the children of Benjamin on the third day, and put themselves in battle array against Geba, as at other times. And if you read the rest of this, you will see that they won this time. They got the victory this time. They got the deliverance from Yah this time, on the third day. The first 2 days, days of despair, days of hopelessness. Yah let them get beaten, Yah let them get beat bad for 2 days. But the third day, Yah brought the deliverance. Praise Yahuwah. And the third example I want to look at is 1 Shemu'el. 1 Shemu'el 30. Talking about the significance of the third day. Yah didn't do anything without significance, brothers and sisters. Praise Yahuwah. And part of the reason he was having the children of Yasharal perform the appointed times and the festivals year by year, gave them specific instructions. Praise Yah, because he was trying to impress something on their minds. And he was trying to prepare them for what was to come. Praise Yahuwah. And so it is not without significance, brothers and sisters, praise Yahuwah, that Yahushua rose the third day. Because I'm showing you some significant things that took place in our history on the third day. This is not comprehensive. There's more than this, but I'm just going to give you 3. Praise Yah. But 1 Samuel 30. 1 Samuel 30, it says, And it came to be when Daud and his men came to Siklag on the third day, that the Amalekites had invaded the south in Siklag, and smote Siklag and burned it with fire. And they took captive the women and those who were there, from small to great. They did not kill anyone, but they led them away and went their way. And Daud and his men came to the city and saw it burned with fire, and their wives and their sons and their daughters had been taken captive. And Daud and the people who were with him lifted up their voices and wept until they had no more power to weep. And Daud's 2 wives, and Ahinoam the Israelitess, and Abigail the widow of Nabal the Carmelite, have been taken captive. And Daud was greatly distressed, for the people spoke of stoning him, because the being of all the people was grieved, for each for his sons and his daughters. But Daud strengthened himself in Yahuwah his Elohim. So what happened was Daud inquired of Elohim, praise Yahuwah, and Yahuwah assured him that to pursue his enemies, encouraged him to pursue his enemies, and assured him that he was going to recover. Praise Yahuwah, and he was going to recover all. Hallelujah. So I want to pick up in verse 11. It says, "And they found a man in the field, a Mitzrite, and took him to Daud. And they gave him bread to eat, and they let him drink water, and gave him a piece of a cake of figs and 2 clusters of raisins. And when he had eaten, his strength came back to him, for he had not eaten bread nor drunk water for 3 days and 3 nights. And Daud said to him, 'To whom do you belong, and where are you from?' And he said, 'I am a young man from Mitzrayim, a servant of an Amalekite. And my master left me behind, for I had been sick 3 days. We attacked the south of the Kerethites, and against that which belongs to Yehuda, and upon the south of Caleb, and we burned Ziklag with fire.'" Praise Yahuwah. "And Daud said to him, 'Could you bring me down to the marauding band?' And he said, 'Swear to me by Elohim that you neither kill me nor surrender me into the hands of my master, then I bring you down to this marauding band.' And he brought him down and saw they were spread out over all the land, eating and drinking and dancing, because of all the great spoil which they had taken from the land of the Pelishites and from the land of Yehuda. And Daud smote them from twilight until the evening of the next day, and none of them escaped, except 400 young men who rode on camels and fled. And Daud rescued all the Amalekites had taken. Daud also rescued his 2 wives, and there was none missing of them, whether small or great, whether sons or daughters, or spoil, or whatever they had taken from them. Daud recovered all." Praise Yah. And this deliverance took place on the 3rd day. Praise Yah. Remember now that Mitzrite, he said he had been sick 3 days. Now, praise Yahuwah. And so from the looks of it, it looks like that this 3rd day was referring to the 3rd day since Ziklag was taken. Praise Yah, because that's how long this man had been sick and left behind and starving. Praise Yah. But on the 3rd day, Yah brings deliverance in a place that seemed hopeless. I mean, enemy forces take your wives and your children from you. Most of the time, they're going to kill the males, rape the women. I mean, that was the normal course of action in war in that day. But none of them were harmed. None of them were killed. Praise Yah, they were all recovered on the 3rd day. Praise Yah, when the situation looked hopeless. Now, last thing I want to show is Hosea. Hosea chapter 6. Hosea chapter 6. I'm going to show you a prophecy here. Hosea chapter 6. Talking about the significance of the 3rd day. Verse 1 says, "Come, and let us turn back to Yahuwah, for he has torn, but he heals us. He has stricken, but he binds us up. After 2 days he shall revive us. On the 3rd day he shall raise us up, so that we live before him. So let us pursue to know Yahuwah. His going forth is as certain as the morning, and he comes to us like the rain, like the latter rain watering the earth." Praise Yahuwah. Now, I want to break this down to you, and I don't want to play date setter here. Praise Yah, but it does say, "After 2 days he shall revive us." Praise Yah. Now, we know that Kepha said a day with Yahuwah is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is as a day. So this has to be talking about something beyond 2 24-hour days here. Praise Yah, or 2 sunrise and sunsets. Let me just say that, because I don't know if they had like 24 hours. You know, I don't know if they counted it like we do. Praise Yah. But he has to be talking about something more than 2 normal days. So 2 prophetic days. A day with Yah is as 1,000 years. 1,000 years is as a day. And Mashah, and see, Kepha got that from Mashah, because in Psalm 90, Mashah is saying essentially the same thing. Psalm chapter 90. Praise Yahuwah. So 2 days from when? 2,000 years from when? Praise Yahuwah. There are those that have speculated that it's 2,000 years from when the Mashiach was born, or when the Mashiach died, or when he rose from the dead. Praise Yah. So I mean, it could be 2,000 years from his resurrection. It could be 2,000 years from AD 70. Because if you look at the context of this, it talks about him tearing us and healing us, striking us and binding us up. When we officially died as a nation for good, praise Yahuwah, in the ancient time would be 70 AD. Praise Yahuwah. We're taken into captivity, and then we returned, and we were split up. You know, most of us were in captivity, but the southern tribes made it back. But as far as all 12 tribes just being shut down as a nation, that officially took place in 70 AD. It's a possibility it could be 2,000 years from 70 AD. So I'm not a date setter. I don't know for sure. What I do know is after 2 days he'll revive us, and then the third day he'll raise us up. And I believe this is talking about our resurrection as a nation, the valley of dry bones. Praise Yahuwah, that as a nation we'll be raised back up after being a dead nation for 2 days or 2,000 years. Praise Yahuwah. And it said after 2 days and in the third day. So that doesn't necessarily mean at the 2,000th year. Praise Yah. Show you how naive I was when I was in Christianity. I believe it was 1999, and I was with a friend of mine. Praise Yah. And we were thinking that Yahushua was going to come back. It was about ready to be the year 2000. Praise Yah. And so, you know, and a lot of people were going crazy over this Y2K thing. Praise Yah. But at least here, it just says after 2 days, in the third day. Doesn't necessarily have to be right at the 2,000 mark, but sometime within that third day, we're going to be resurrected as a nation after 2 days or 2,000 years of just hopelessness as a nation now. Praise Yahuwah. Individuals being revived, but as a nation, hopeless for these 2 days. But in the third day, that's when deliverance comes. Praise Yahuwah. That's when, hallelujah, Yah raises us up. So even prophetically, us as a nation, and what's going to happen with us, that points towards what happened with the Mashiach. Praise Yahuwah. And so we see this consistent pattern throughout the Scriptures, brothers and sisters, of the third day, where you have 2 days of seeming despair and hopelessness, but on that third day, bam, Yah brings deliverance.
Hallelujah.
And see, that's why I believe that Yahushua put an emphasis not just on his resurrection, but on the third day resurrection, because those who knew the Scriptures, those who had insight, knew what the significance of the third day was, because they knew what I'm presenting to you today and more. Praise Yah. Hallelujah. And so he emphasized that third day, and he even said it is written that he would be raised from the dead the third day. And so, brothers and sisters, that's the bridge. That's the bridge. We all agree that first fruits typifies the resurrection of the Mashiach, praise Yahuwah. But the bridge is this. And the bridge that will bring you to the true Shabbat is that first fruits typifies a third day resurrection of the Mashiach. And in order for that to be so, that it has to be waved on Aviv 16 every year. Praise Yahuwah. Meaning, tomorrow after the Shabbat, Aviv 15 has to be seventh day Shabbat every single year. Praise Yahuwah. The only way to do that is to reset Rosh Chodesh, the head month of the year, the new year. In the head month of the year, to reset Rosh Chodesh, reset the count to Shabbat at Rosh Chodesh, and also at every following new moon. That's the only way you're going to come up with the restored calendar of Exodus 12 through Exodus 16, where you have the Shabbat falling on the lunar dates of the 8th, 15th, 22nd, and 29th of both the first and second months. Praise Yahuwah. And so the only way to get around that, brothers and sisters, is to basically throw out the third day, and you can't do that. That's why I came up with part 2 of this lesson, brothers and sisters, because I really wanted to drive the point home about the third day. Praise Yahuwah. And so that's it, brothers and sisters. That's the key. Use the key now and get to the true Shabbat. And with that, I will say, Shalom.